All right. Tell me something fun, y'all. What's been going on?
I lined up some showings for a buyer.
All right. Let's celebrate everything, right? Good stuff. Where's the guy buying?
Looking target East Atlanta, but I got him to look into East Lake as well. Lowest is 4, most expensive 5, and then Saturday I got a open house.
Okay, so is that I think I know where that lead came from. Did it come from the open house that you hosted last week?
Mm-hmm. No, not last week. 2 weeks ago.
Wait a second. So you hosted an open house for a property that was listed for what, 485, I think it was?
No, it was 5 at that time. Yeah.
Okay, 500,000. An unrepresented buyer walked in the door, and now you're going to help that guy buy a home?
Hopefully.
Wait, so all you had to do was show up at an open house? I'm not assuming that you didn't do more, but wait, all you had to do was be present at an open house and be a nice guy and know what to
Put
say to
myself
him.
out there. Yep.
And the next thing you know, you got a $500,000 buyer?
Looks like it. Hopefully.
Wait a second. This business must be super expensive to get into, right?
I mean, it costs a little money up front.
I'm just messing with you, but do you see this, guys? I mean, we just got to put ourselves in the path of business, right? We got to put ourselves in the path of business. I think that's awesome, Chris. That's awesome. Hopefully you'll get another one this week, right? If you need clients, then get to an open house, right? Host it or co-host it or whatever you need to do. Follow somebody, shadow them, so that you can see how potentially easy this could be, right? What if you did an open house every single week and you found a new $500,000 buyer every single week and you closed half of them? You would make in a month on average what a lot of people make in a year. Do you have anyone have an aha on that? Oh my gosh, you guys are killing me here.
I mean, I'm definitely always trying to line up. I'm almost like trying to replicate Heather's success and starting off with just doing as many open houses as possible, because that has definitely offered me a warm intro when I'm talking to the neighbors. So when I'm door knocking, they're more receptive, they're more cordial, and actually sometimes rather pleasant, opposed to like, get off my lawn. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
hey, and if they say get off your lawn, I mean, in some ways it's okay because they're telling you they're not going to be that fun to work with anyway.
Yeah.
And at least they're doing it quickly. I'd rather find out they're a jerk within the first 5 seconds than after having invested a bunch of other, additional time with them, right? All right, awesome. Anyone else want to share? Any fun stories? Anyone need any emergency help? Anyone that is struggling with something that maybe the group could benefit from?
I have a question that maybe you can go over about FHA.
Okay.
So my lender said that she could get my buyer through in 14 days. Financing contingency period is 14 days. That's what she agreed to. That's what she recommended. I asked her if she was sure. What happens if my buyer doesn't get financing approval within that 14 days?
Okay, that's a great question, and you asked the. Let me give you a few ideas. Okay, I want to make sure that everyone understands a very important distinction. Okay, a financing contingency is in a perfect world, the buyer would have a financing contingency that took them all the way through closing. In a perfect world, the seller wouldn't even agree to a financing contingency, right? Because they're essentially taking their home off the market, they're boxing up all their stuff, potentially buying something else, and they're hoping and praying that this particular buyer who claims to have spoken to a lender and had all their stuff reviewed, we got to make sure that that loan can go through before the deal is going to close, right? So in a perfect world, the seller wouldn't even agree at all to it. They just say, you're going to buy the house, and if you can't buy the house, you're going to lose your money, period, right? So what ends up happening is we settle on something like Donna's saying, which is around 2 to 3 weeks, right? In my opinion, 2 weeks is not a lot, particularly for an FHA loan.
Yeah, in
Please
my
tell me it's
opinion,
not in
it
like
wasn't a lot.
it's not in
I
like a
was,
condo complex or anything, right?
no, it's a single family home, and I was really nervous about the 14 days because shelter normally does 21, and
Okay,
21
so
I'm comfortable with.
so that's the distinction right there. Is you're almost certainly, even if it was 21, you're not going to get a clear to close in 21 days, most likely, right? So what you're interested in is not necessarily that you're never going to have the benefit of having that. What we're trying to figure out is how many days do we need in order for a denial to show up, right? So the question is not if, let's say we agree to 14 days and on day 13, the lender says, oh, one of the ratios is out of whack, we can't do this loan. Okay, then you get a denial letter and you get your earnest money back. If that happens on day 15, then they're going to lose their earnest money. So it's not a discussion really of how many days it takes to get the loan done. It's how many days the parties agree to have that as a contingency, right? So most likely, almost certainly, you're not going to get a full loan approval in 14 days. But by that time, you need to have indicated what the issues are and can they be addressed. So I would like at least a preliminary, like what they call sometimes a conditional approval, which means everything, it looks good. We'll just need one more pay stub at the end. And, we need to understand where that deposit came from or whatever, right? It's conditions that can be met where no one believes that it'll cause a hiccup, right? So the file should at least go through preliminary underwriting before that contingency period is up. So to answer your question, if by the 14th day, they have not identified any red flags, yet they have not conditionally approved the loan, then now basically you can get the loan and later on and everything will be fine, right? But if you don't get the loan later on, then you may lose, I mean, you're definitely going to lose your earnest money and you may even get sued, right? So when you agree to 14 days, oftentimes what you're doing is making a stronger bet on this person's financing ability. And quite honestly, I wouldn't necessarily say you're putting more at risk, but you're putting the pressure big time on the lender. So if the lender says, hey, 14 days, I say, walk me through that. Does that mean you're expecting to have a conditional approval within 14 days? You think this is going to be a clear to close in 14 days? What are you telling me? Right? Because if I can't get a conditional approval within 14 days, then I'm not so sure I would agree to that. But in some respects, especially in markets like this, under certain circumstances, I might do whatever I need to do in order to get the home. Then I'll deal with all the other stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what to do. My 14 days is up on Saturday. And so at this point, I should be asking the lender for a letter that shows conditional approval.
They probably won't issue a letter to you just because you're not a party to the transaction. They would probably issue one to the buyer or to the borrower. But at the very least, I want to know what's going on. Hey, you find anything you're worried about? How do you feel about this? Is everything going?
I mean, verbally, she's told me that she's good with it.
Who's good with it?
But the lender has told me that she's 99.9% sure that everything's fine. But the listing agent is asking for proof of an approved buyer. She said the seller would like to know by July 31st, which is Saturday, that we have an approved buyer subject to appraisal.
I just asked the lender to give you proof. I don't think that I have to go back and look at the contingency. I don't think it's worded that way. I think it basically says that the seller can ask for that letter. Like I think it says within 7 days of the end of the financing contingency.
Okay.
You can go back and read it or send me a picture of it and I'll read it with you. But I don't think you're obligated to give that letter to them on the date of the contingency.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I mean, they're really in, yeah, let's read it, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. But just as a sidebar for everybody, you need to be in constant communication with your buyer's lender or the other lender need be, if you need to be, right? How's everything going? Need anything? I'm here to help. Need anything? Got all the papers you need? Need anything? Right? We are in charge of everybody. Okay. And we had this discussion, I forget who it was with the other day. I think it was with Ebony, who you know, one of the agents, if we're co-oping with agents, a lot of times, guys, I hate to say it this way, but the better agent does the majority of the work. Right? The better agent does their job and most of the other agent's job, unfortunately. So you just got to understand that more than likely you guys are going to find yourself as the better agent in a transaction, and don't be afraid to just do whatever you got to do to get it to the closing table. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Anyone unclear on anything we talked about? All right, we're going to talk about limiting beliefs today. Okay, removing limiting beliefs. What is a limiting? I'd love for today to be a bit more interactive than usual. Okay, talk to me about what are limiting beliefs, and maybe what is an example of a limiting belief that you have currently.
I've got one, Bill.
All right.
So I want to post something on Facebook, but I think whatever I say is going to be stupid, or it's not going to be relevant, or I'm constantly trying to figure out the perfect thing to say, and by the time I do that, I don't post anything.
Okay. All right. Let's get a few of them out there, and then we'll kind of address them one by one.
For me, it's feeling like I'm bothering people when I call people in my sphere, when I'm trying to do my DTD2. I feel like I'm bothering people. So I find that that's a limiting belief because it keeps me from doing it sometimes.
Right. And let's define what a limiting belief is real fast. A limiting belief is anything that prevents you from doing what you're intending to do. Right. It's basically just self-talk, right? Some of our self-talk is, hey, go for it, do it, you can do it. And some of our self-talk is, gosh, if I post that, people will think I'm, whatever. Right.
Right.
Okay, let's get a couple more.
Thinking I don't know enough, so when an objection comes along, like I'm not sure how to answer it. And so I hesitate contacting people.
Yep, that's a real one. That is so real.
Yeah, for sure.
I was gonna say also, like, just being new for newer folks, most of the time they're gonna feel like not putting themselves out there because why would someone want to work with me? I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing, or kind of that self-doubt, that self-sabotage.
Yep. All right, these are all so real, guys. Let's hear a few more.
The fear of rejection.
What if I fail?
Not
What if
even-
I don't do good?
Okay,
Yeah.
rejection, failing. Others? All right, let's start with these. I want to read you just a couple of phrases from the actual curriculum. It says, you need to clear your mind of limiting beliefs before you can successfully develop at a higher level. Are there any thoughts in your head? Any of these thoughts in your head? I don't have enough time for training. I can't be successful in this market. I can't devote 3 hours of each day to lead generation, right? High achievers remove these beliefs from their thinking that hold them back. They redirect these negative thoughts into positive ones, into unlimiting beliefs that will fuel their success. For example, if I put in the time for training now, I will reap the long-term benefits in my business. A shifted market is the very best opportunity for gaining market share. I can't afford to miss 3 hours of lead generation. It's my future. Okay. So whenever you start thinking of something that's popping into your mind that's holding you back, we should analyze it as quickly as possible from the opposite side, right? What if this actually isn't true, right? What if the other party isn't thinking what I think they're thinking? What would happen, right? Let me start with Michael's comment, because it kind of it's a very much an overarching idea. Okay, so everything that I say today, I'm not pretending that it's easy to do, just so everyone is clear on that. Okay, this is a journey. You know, it's not gonna you're not gonna be most likely a totally different person at 9:01 today. Okay, it's a journey. All right, so I think there's a different root at the base of your concern, Michael, and you tell me if you think I'm on track.
Right.
I think that we have this preconceived notion that the world is expecting us to be perfect at all times. Okay, and we can go into why that's the case forever. Okay, but what I mean by that is, let's take a video, for example. They've done tons of research on this, and they found that the videos that were the most engaging are the ones where the person's personality was most evident, right? So, for example, maybe you're not dressed to the nines in every single video that you do. Maybe you coughed in the middle of the video and didn't make such a big deal about it, right? Maybe you actually showed like a blooper reel at the end of your video instead of the actual video that you were trying to make, right? People know, like, you're a real human being that's got that's unique, right? So I think if we're afraid to make a post, it's similar to what Fabiola said, or I'm sorry, it's similar to what who said that about failing, right? We're worried that we're going to get judged, and that may not feel good, right? When the fact of the matter is you're going to get judged as somebody who's fun to be around and who's engaged in their business, right? So it's just a matter of, like, if you were to post something and it was like, you know, hey, let me tell you about, you know, how we resolved this inspection issue, or hey, let me explain how, you know, we overcame an appraisal challenge, right? And you think that somebody is judging you on that, the truth of the matter is you probably are going to get judged. But who was it that said those that mind don't matter, and that those that matter don't mind? You ever heard that?
I have, yeah.
Right? If somebody's going to criticize you for what you're doing for your family and your community, they don't deserve your business anyway, right? Did I saw one post in the let me see if I yeah, I posted this exact quote in the help group 2 days ago. It was from Babe Ruth.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was good
Okay,
stuff.
the loudest boos will always come from the cheap seats. People who invest the least in you will have the most to say about you. Trust your work and keep your circle tight. Class dismissed. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple. So those that matter, or I'm sorry, those that mind, those that like don't find value in what you're doing, they're not going to be your customers anyway. Right? But you can also look at it from the other way, which is what I've been experiencing in my mind is giving me this result. The question then is, are you satisfied with this result? If you are satisfied, then you shouldn't change anything. But if you're not satisfied, we have to go back and figure out what adjustments we can make, right? And most likely it's going to come from working on the brain. Candace, did you want to add something?
Yes, I did. I'm of course reading all the time, and I'm reading about this top producer And one of the things she does in her morning ritual is as she writes down the things she's grateful for. She also writes down at least 3 things that she feels are her strengths, something that she's kind to herself, in other words. And I remember years ago that I forgot where it was, but they said to keep a success file. So when you're having a day when you're feeling some self-doubt, you can look through, letters that people have written you or recommendations you've gotten or any kind of positive feedback that you've gotten so that you can boost yourself out of that self-doubt or that kind of down period.
You said something really important that you kind of glazed right over though, which is be nice to yourself. Right?
Yeah. I always say treat yourself like you would your best friend.
Right. So you got to ask yourself, are you treating yourself appropriately? Like, is all your self-talk about how you don't deserve something or how you're not good enough or how you don't know enough? Or is your self-talk saying, hey, I don't know much about this topic, so today I'm gonna figure it out? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Be nice to yourself, for crying out loud, right? There's a quote from an author named Simon Travagili or something. It says, the greatest barrier to someone achieving their potential is their denial of it. Is the fact that they just look at it and say, I don't deserve that, or, oh, that's hard to get that, or something like that. You see what I'm saying? We were all new at some point. Okay, so let's touch on Donna's comment for a moment. So here's a new mindset I want you to adopt, Donna, when you're making calls, and this applies for everyone because I guarantee every single one of you has struggled with this. I do too. Okay, that we're going to be interrupting their day, right? So let's just lay it out there. We are going to be interrupting their day. They are not expecting a call from us today unless we have already promised it to them. So we will be interrupting their day. Let's just get it out there. Now, do you want to interrupt their day with something of value, or do you want to interrupt their day with something of no value? So you should be asking yourself, if I'm going to bother them, then what I should be thinking in my mind is, I don't have enough value to share today. So you shouldn't be saying to yourself, I won't make the call. You should be saying to yourself, what do I need to create or improve upon or talk about that this person needs to hear today? Right? So you're making the call because they lack some type of information that if they had it, they could be making better choices. Therefore, if you do not make the call, you are not being the best advisor to the people that trust you the most. So you are going to interrupt their day. But if I had some great news, Donna, that could save you some money, wouldn't you want your day interrupted? Yeah, is that a yes?
Yes, that's a yes.
Okay, beautiful. So whenever you're hesitating on making a call because you're worried about whether it's going to be salesy or something like that, ask yourself, do I have enough value to speak about today to share with this person? And if I don't, go immediately to how do I get more value rather than, okay, I just won't make the call. Candace.
I was going to say, we get so much good information in our team meetings. And after Tuesday, I've got a list of people that I call, and I'm going to be talking to them about the loan modifications, not for them necessarily, but in case they know of someone or have a family member who's struggling.
That's right. And that could be, like a quick Facebook Live or something, right? You're walking out of the, you could be walking out of the team meeting room or walking out of the office building and say, oh my gosh, just getting off of our awesome team meeting today. We learned a specific thing about, how FHA student loans are calculated. And for most buyers that would qualify for FHA, that could save them, they could buy in, I'm fumbling today, but they could increase their purchasing power by $30,000, right? Who do you know that didn't think they could buy now, but they actually probably could? Direct message me for more information. Is that
I
interrupting- is that
I
interrupting
actually did
somebody's
have one
day?
of those.
Donna,
Bill?
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I actually did have one of those. Somebody in my sphere thought she was going to have to do a lease purchase. And when we talked about the thing that Shelter had brought up about FHA and student loans, she ended up finding out that she could qualify for a $260,000 mortgage. So that was a pleasant surprise. It kind of changed her life. That's
Yeah,
not
I
what
bet, I
she
bet she didn't mind that daily interruption, did she?
did not. So it was a good call.
Okay, so let's summarize how we're going to deal with that limiting belief, which is we bring value to the community. So if you're not clear on what the value is, then we need to clarify that so that you feel more comfortable ultimately making the call, right? Because they should be thrilled that you called them. You should be training them to when you call, they're expecting to be given something or told something that's going to help them. Right? If every time you call your people, you're asking for business, they're going to stop taking your call. Right? Okay. Does that help, Donna?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, let's combine the I don't know enough with being new. Also incredibly real, guys. This is, don't be afraid to have these conversations. We've all been there and many of us are still struggling with it. Okay. Here's the thing. You can't get abs by reading a book about how to get abs. Okay. You got to go out there and do it. You just got to. Okay. And if you're worried about the presentation, then do the presentation with a friend or a family member and record it, right? It's like watching game film, right? Do athletes watch game film?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so they know what the other team's going to do in a variety of situations. And when those situations come up, they know their tendencies. And so they prepare their team to fight those tendencies, right?
Right.
So what's your version of game film? You have any game film?
Videos, training.
Yeah, that's actually not the direction I was going to go. But I think
Script
that's definitely
practice.
important. That videoing your presentations, maybe recording your calls, right? And saying, ooh, I should have said that at that time. Gosh, I said that with an upswing instead of a downswing and I created doubt. Hey, they asked me a question I've heard 3 times and I still don't know the answer. Hey, Bill, what's this? Right? So you are the player and you are oftentimes the coach. What'd you say?
I was all like, we're also our opponent. we're everyone on the
Yeah,
field.
that's really interesting. You really are. You really are. So so let's back up on how to address this. Number one is we commit every single day to get smarter, right? We've been talking about that since day one. So Fabiola, can I
Oh, it is?
can I coach you specifically?
Yeah, I want to. Sure.
Okay, so keep in mind, whatever you say, you just had the courage to say it out loud, and everyone else has not had the courage to say it out loud. Okay, so congratulations. Okay, this is your first step in removing this unlimiting belief. Okay, name it one thing that you feel like you don't know that if you knew, you'd take more action.
There's a lot of things I feel like I don't know yet, or like I feel like I'm not proficient enough yet. Like I have to
First
script
thing that
practice.
pops into your mind.
Script practicing, like knowing what to say, when to say it. Like that's my first thing.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now that you have kind of vocalized that to everyone, I'm sure you vocalized it to yourself a number of times. What did you do about that? What action step did you take to make it adjust, right? What have you done specifically to get more courage with the scripts or get more familiarity with the scripts? What action steps have you taken?
So I reached out to 2 people. One's on PC coaching, one's not.
Okay.
To set times aside so I could script practice with them essentially. So I had 2 partners.
Beautiful. So, and are you doing that twice a week or every day or what?
Well, we're still setting it up yet still because one's the same type of position where they got kids and they just have to wait till the kids get back to school. So I've just been looking at my scripts and just kind of mentally running it through before I get to them first.
Okay. Fabiola needs a script practice partner. Who's willing to be her script practice partner? Chris,
Yeah.
done. No more waiting.
All right,
Okay.
thanks, Chris.
All
You
right,
got
y'all
it.
connect on offline and get together on what time you can script practice and what days you can script practice. It works. Okay. If you're like, hey, I want to be a script practice partner, and they're like, you need to wait 3 more weeks for the kids to go back. You don't qualify anymore. Sorry.
Okay.
You're not taking your business seriously enough. I got to be honest with you. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Chris, that dude takes care, that dude's serious about his business. You got a great script practice partner. Okay. Okay. Don't let each other down. All right. Seriously.
Oh, no, don't worry.
All right. Now, so great. That's a great first step. So let's identify the scripts that need the most attention because there's 500 different scripts. So let's get more specific. Should we look at buyer scripts? Should we look at seller scripts? Should we look at for sale by owner scripts? Should we look at circle prospecting scripts? Should we look at objection handlers? Let's one by one, let's start printing them out and identifying the order of priority and taking a very systematic approach. Because if we look at a 600-page script book and say, I don't know scripts, I don't blame you. That's pretty intimidating, right? So pull out the 2 pages of the script you're going to master today, right? Tomorrow we'll practice something different. Make sense?
Yes.
Now, guys, you are going to learn something new every day, and you are going to learn something new, most likely every single transaction. So you can't there's nothing we can do to say like, hey, just read that book and you'll know everything there is to know about real estate, right? You just got to go out there and try it, right? The great news is you're at the #1 training organization in the world, and you have a group of your peers who want to see you be successful in addition to the coaches, right? So you have a support group and agent mentors, obviously. So whenever you are dealing with a kind of a larger topic, the question should be is, what is the most important thing I can learn today that will cause me to feel better about my place in the business, right? So maybe you say, I want to get more familiar with things I would do or say around an open house. Okay. So you should know the buyer intake questions, right? You should read through all the open house materials in the Google Drive, watch a couple videos, come back to us with a couple specific questions. Hey, I heard this, but I thought of this. What do you think about that? Those are perfect questions to ask. Okay. So, if somebody says, oh, well, I don't want to work with you, you're new, right? One line that I've heard people say before is, well, the benefit of me being new, not to mention the part that I'm with the #1 training organization in the world, and I'm a part of an 88 member productivity coach, and I meet with my coach every single morning to get trained and coached on how to prepare or how to represent my clients properly. And I've got them on speed dial right here. So if there's ever anything I don't know, we're going to get you an answer. I'm not just going to lie to you. But all these other agents that are experienced, they're busy with other customers. So they might not be able to get to you in time. You're my only customer right now. So I'm going to be all over everything that needs to be all over. Okay. And what the hell? What's the difference? They already said no. Now you're fighting for it. So you may as well try again. You see what I'm saying?
Honestly, Bill, I've never really heard I've never really heard of anybody that was refused because they were new.
You know that, so what's interesting then, I can't, I'd have to really think on whether I have either. So maybe it's just never happened and it's just a limiting belief that it's like they hand you your real estate license and then they hand you that limiting belief. And
It's
it's never actually been true.
And it's because real estate is relationship based. So people do business with people they like, know, and trust. So if they trust that you care about them, that's not an issue. They know you're going to work hard for them.
Right. So Gary Geller said when he was being interviewed before KW was started, and he was going to be like a executive trainer or something like that. And the guy said, "Why should I hire you?" The interviewer. And Gary says, "I am a professional and I know what I know and I know what I do not know, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. And so you can be confident that if you ask me a question and I answer it, it's because I'm certain that's the answer. And if you ask me a question I don't know the answer, I'm going to get the answer for you as soon as possible. And every promise I make is going to be kept. And every deadline is going to be monitored and studied. And I'm going to gather every little inch of information you need to make the most sophisticated choice possible." So knowing that, sir, is there anything else we need to discuss before we start getting started, before we get started today? Now, if you say, "Yeah, well, I am kind of new. I've only been in the business 3 months," they're going to be like, "We're done." Right? So your confidence is what's going to combat that. It's not how much stuff you know. So you're either confident in your own knowledge or the knowledge of those closest to you, and then borrow that confidence if need be. Does that make sense?
It does.
I
Okay.
had an experience just it's about a week ago, and I was with people that I knew that I hadn't seen in a few months, and so they knew that I'd gone into real estate, and we had a great conversation. I'm telling them about the market, and someone had questions, and I mean, it wasn't at all a confidence issue. Like, I mean, I thought I was doing great, and they're like, "Oh God, you've learned a lot." Da, 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 da. But at the end, I'm walking out with someone, and this is someone I know. I've played tennis with her, like she's been my partner, but not that I am friends with necessarily all the time. But she was saying that she was kind of joking that her and some neighbors want to maybe switch houses, and I'm like, "Oh, I could broker that." She's like, "Well, we would use an agent to do that," and then she said, "But my husband is thinking he really wants to move into this neighborhood." And I'm like, "Well, how can I help?" And she's like, "Well, you just don't have any experience." And it's
And
like that, like I
what did you
realized
say?
I was shocked because it didn't even occur to me that like that was an issue. And kind of like what you were saying, like with these comebacks, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I got to be more prepared for that," because I didn't have I felt like I got punched, I was like,
Yeah, that's one of the, like, whenever you feel like you're getting punched, or whenever you are, you need like an extra second to like formulate your thoughts, a good response is, "I totally understand where you're coming from. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?" Right? What specifically are you looking for when it comes to experience? Right? So are they looking for somebody who's been in the business for 25 years and hasn't adjusted to technology? Are they looking for somebody who lives in the neighborhood because they think that is somehow advantageous, or that this is the worst one of all? "Oh, I want the neighborhood expert." Why? So you're competing with 4 of her other listings? Right? So what's probably happening is that the person you're speaking to has some limiting beliefs, interestingly enough. So we have to kind of move around the edges a little bit to try to figure out, "Hey, listen, I get it. It's a big decision. Let me ask you, when it comes to meeting a realtor or deciding what realtor you're going to work with, what are you focused on, right? What are the questions you'd plan to ask? What's most important to you?" don't even, just move on. Don't even acknowledge that they said that you're inexperienced. You can show your experience by the questions that you ask and how you dictate that, that conversation. And by the time they kind of throw out some of their ideas, they may actually realize that the ideas aren't that good, right? At the very least, you're looking for a meeting, right? Would you give me an opportunity just simply to meet with you? I just want to learn more about your situation. I'm sure I could help. I just want to help you understand better how I work, and I want to better understand what you're looking for. Maybe it's a match, maybe it's not. It's almost like a take back to some degree. Make sense?
It does. And I think it was good that that happened, because it makes me, one, it gave me instant like limiting beliefs
Yeah.
that I had to kind of like throw out of my head. Like, okay, don't think like that. Like for a second, you start doubting, like, oh gosh, maybe I need to go, like, am I out of place for even thinking that I could help this person? And then, and that made me stop. But then the other part is knowing, like, okay, think about that. And how do you respond to that in a way that would then, make them want to work with you, and not just like, oh, you're right, I don't, like that would be the total wrong way to do it.
Well,
So it good that happened, because I'll be better prepared if that happens again.
let's try to give you even a more of a summary idea, which is, oftentimes we think that we're supposed to answer a question with like a defense, so to speak. Just try to answer a question with another question, right? And if you don't give a whole lot of attention to that comment, sometimes they'll forget they made it, right? And you're just discovering more about what's important to them, right? So don't say, well, I've been in the business 3 months and I'm in coaching and my company is number one and all that. That's not gonna probably do it. You just got to figure out what they want and then tell them that's exactly how you operate your business, right? What are you looking for? Like, how will you decide you've met the right agent? Well, I'll know when I've met the right agent when she shows me the last 20 sales she's had. Great. So could I if that's the way that you're going to decide your agent, would you do me a huge favor? Would you allow me to introduce you to a colleague of mine who has that type of rap sheet, right? Because not every agent is great, and not every agent is a person of integrity, unfortunately. And I just don't want you, because I care so much about you. If I don't qualify because that is the deal breaker for you, would you at least allow me an opportunity to put you in front of an awesome agent that sounds like what you're describing? I mean, at some point we're kind of, if they're like, Ryan, I don't care what you tell me, I'm not going to hire you, but in nicer terms, maybe you go with that approach. Say, look, I only want to offer this to you because I care, and I don't want you to get with a weak agent, right? Because not all agents are created equal, right? And as you're saying these things, and as you're saying it with confidence, you're proving to this person that you are sharp, that you are a hard worker, that you are learning and having fun. Does that make sense?
I have a question, Bill. Would this be an opportunity to do something a little proactive, since there is the relationship and the rapport? There was information given about a neighborhood or what they were looking for. If she did a preliminary search and just showed some options, say, hey, look, I know this is what we talked about, and hey, I'd love to get and kind of do almost a mini presentation. Or would that be, because there was already the initial objection, not worth the time?
If you asked 100 realtors what you just asked me, I think you'd get a lot of different answers, but I'll just tell you what I think. This is her tennis partner, for crying out loud. I mean, this is a big moment in the relationship that needs to be sorted out, in my opinion, right? And I tend to be a little bit more of a fixer than most people, right? So that's kind of the angle that I'm going at. But look, if you don't want to work with me, I get it. However, you're like one of my good friends, and I spend a lot of time with you, and it would mean the world to me to have your support in my business. So I'm curious, would you be open to me, doing the presentation for you, and you can kind of see how I operate and some of the cool tools that I can use to help you get the most money for your home? Maybe you can give me a little feedback, right? Maybe you can help me get awesome, because if you're not comfortable using me, I get it. But maybe you have other friends that you'd be willing to connect me with if you knew I was good. Would you be open to that? I would definitely not give up. If they say no one time, hell no. They got to say no like 400 times for me to leave them alone. They're either gonna marry a realtor, become a realtor, or die. And oftentimes, if they're married a realtor, I'll still keep them in the database, because 55% of marriages end anyway. I mean, isn't that right?
I love how you spin that into a positive.
How did I spin that into a positive?
Hey, because if the marriages go bad, there's potential you could work with them again.
Yeah, and truthfully, 85% of realtors don't make it past 3 years, so I keep them in the database too.
Heck yeah.
Right. I mean, I was invited. What was it, probably 4 or 5 years ago, to a lunch by my brother-in-law. And my brother-in-law and I went out to lunch, and he essentially took me out to lunch to tell me that I was not going to be the realtor that he worked with, right? When him and my sister-in-law bought a home. So I didn't know that they had adopted this philosophy of, I don't work with family members on professional things, which, by the way, I don't see that. I don't really understand that so much, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But because I knew I wasn't going to be the buyer's agent, like there was nothing I was going to say with all of the language skills and all of the scripts that I have internalized, I wasn't going to win that one. Okay. So I said, look, there's a lot of bad agents out there. I know a lot of great agents. Can I just connect you with one of them? Right. And he allowed me to do that. And I got paid a few $1,000s for the referral. You see what I'm saying? So oftentimes you shouldn't don't give up. Right. And that goes to the final point, which is failing. I mean, failing is only failing if you stop trying, right? If somebody says I failed at that, it's because you just stopped, right? So that there is failure in, like, hey, I tried this particular lead generation strategy, and I did it 16 different ways, and my coach and I talked about it for 3 months and it didn't work. Okay, I give you that. Let's try something else. We're failing forward, right? So if you're being yourself and you're showing your personality to people, and you're fun to be around, right? Have fun with it. Okay, there's a book called Mindset. By a woman named Carol Dweck. Probably one of the, I don't know, I've probably read 100 books in the last 2-3 years. And it's definitely in the top 5 of what I've read in the last couple of years. It is really good. Mindset. And basically the summary of that book is that there's kind of 2 mindsets generally that people will have. They'll either have a fixed mindset, right? Or they'll have a growth mindset. Okay, so interestingly enough, some of the people that are most likely to have a fixed mindset are really high achievers when they were young, right? Oh, I got straight A's in middle school and I know everything and I don't need any help from anyone else, and I'm just going to do it myself because I know how to do it. And they tend to be not that coachable. And you ever heard the phrase that A students work for B students in the company that the C students own? Right? Because an A student walks in and says, well, I know how to do this. I'll just do it myself. I'm smart. I don't need to learn anything else. A C student, no offense if any of you are C students, but a C student says, hey, maybe I'm not that good at this. So is there anybody that's done it before? I guess I'll just learn from them. Is there a model or system to follow? Right? And they're used to maybe not nailing every assignment that they had. And so they've just gotten in the habit of just continuing to move forward. And that's what an amazing situation they found themselves in. Does that make sense? So it's the people that are that kind of associate failure with their own like personality. Like, I am a failure because the open house didn't work out. Right? No, the open house was a failure. You're awesome. Right? So we have to disconnect the feeling of failure with a mean talk to yourself. I think Candace probably said it best today. I mean, we literally could have had a 5-second call. Just be nice to yourself.
And
Right.
I have a saying, this came about last year when I was working on changing things I dislike into gratitude. And the saying is, and what I came up with is, rejection is protection. It's God's way of keeping me out of somebody's life that's not part of his plan, and vice versa, keeping them out of my life when it's not part of the plan. So it's actually, if you start thinking about rejection in that way, it's like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of reminds me of a bold law, which is fear or faith, you choose. Right? So you can either say, hey, there must be something in this millionaire real estate agent book. You got, thousands of people that have built huge companies with these systems and models. There must be something of this lead generation stuff, and have faith in it and trust the fact that they just say, hey, just more conversations, there'll be more appointments, there'll be more opportunities, there'll be more commission checks. You trust in that process, knowing that you're probably not going to get immediate results, and you just keep your head down and do the work. Or you could be fearful that they're going to ask you a question you don't know the answer to, which they probably will. And you probably will get rejected. But if you sulk all day about it, ain't nothing going to change. You see what I'm saying? So when something unfortunate is happening, you can either like I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about how they didn't have a lot of people in their local database, right? They were from a different place, right? They moved here recently. And I said, look, you made a choice to get into the people business, and you happen to live in Atlanta, right? So are you just going to say that day after day after day after day and expect business to come to you? Or are you going to do something about the fact that you don't have a lot of relationships here? Like, go talk to some strangers. It's up to you. If you go talk to strangers, you'll build the business just like everyone else can. But if you want to use the fact that you're not from here as an excuse, you're not going to get the results you want. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone want to share any ahas today?
I just wanted to say one thing, then that's that yesterday you brought up that episode of the podcast of the one thing.
Yeah. Did you listen to that?
I did. I happened to have to go somewhere in the car yesterday, so I listened to that. And then it kept saying, make sure you listen to the one before this too, which I then did.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I may have been even in the one before that, but something they said actually changed the way I thought about lead generating, and it actually made me excited about it for like the first time.
Please share. Please share.
And what they said, and you have to kind of listen to how it all came together, but it was, we've heard about like on Facebook, it's better to like people than to be likable.
Mhm.
Like you should like people's thing, comment, and, rather than be like, and I think that's kind of where it was going. But it said, when you talk to someone, instead of, just, hey, do you know anyone that wants to buy, sell, or invest, that kind of thing? Because a lot of people don't, but say, how can I add value to you? What can I
Yeah.
do to add value? You know, and not just like, how can I help, which is another way, but like, how can I add value? And it's like, if someone says, I'm not going to move. Okay, well, what can I do to add value to you? Oh, well, you know what? I really would just like to know what the market is in the neighborhood, or,
Mhm.
you know what, I always need a good something or other contractor. Like, I think it kind of puts it back on them to tell them how you can help service them. And I just felt like that was a different way to phrase it and to think about it.
I love that. Thank you very, very much for sharing. By the way, that would be an example of something that you could share in the morning when I say, what'd you learn, or what's new, or something like that.
I know, I was trying to connect. I was in the car. I couldn't get the speaker to work, so I'm sorry, but I just
No,
wanted
I appreciate
it.
this. So,
And if you
so
haven't, for those of you who haven't had a chance, just throw it on in the car, I mean, or something, but those 2 episodes I thought were really, really good.
I appreciate you you listening, number one, and you sharing that as well. What I'm thinking is that it's this idea that you just need to be you got to figure out how they want to be serviced, right? It's the same idea as going into a buyer presentation and saying, hey, I want this to be a 5-star experience for you. What would need to happen for that to happen, for you to feel that way, right? Hey, what's the most important thing that needs to happen in this transaction for you to leave a raving fan of us, right? So it's also this idea of like, when I was in a Power Core for a couple of years, 10 years ago, and it's like a networking group where you have breakfast together every week, and it's like at 7 in the morning. It's basically a referral group, and one of the things that we learned there is, don't stand up and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody who wants to buy a home. It's too vague, right? Instead, you stand up and say, hey, I'm looking for a family this week who is, they have a college age student, or a college age child, or somebody that's about to graduate high school, because they may have some questions about, moving, moving down or whatever, downsizing, right? And that causes the brain of the listeners to go a lot more specific. So what Ryan's doing is, she's not saying, what can you do to help? She's saying, what kind of value can I bring? So she's trying to extract the data of, how can I be of service to you uniquely, right? So she's giving the listener a little bit more clarity so that they can search for an answer. Does that make sense? That's kind of like if you go into a a suit store or whatever, and the salesperson comes up and says, can I help you? You're like, you immediately say no. But if they walked up and said, hey, you here looking for business clothes or casual clothes? And I'm like, casual clothes. And then they start a conversation that I'm more than happy to participate in, because I don't feel like I'm being sold anything. This guy's going to teach me something about how clothes match, or what's considered casual, or whatever, right? You see where I'm going with that? Okay, so let's summarize the 2 most important statements. Number 1, be nice to yourself. Okay, everyone clear on that one? And when somebody asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, instead of trying to defend yourself, then just ask another question. Just ask another question. Tell me a little bit more about that. I'm curious. Can you explain that a little bit better, or a little bit more? Right? What is so important? What is important to you about, what specifically is important to you about that? What will you be looking for when you choose an agent? How will you know you found the right one? Make sense? I appreciate everyone's time today. I know we went a little bit long, but I think this was worthwhile. I hope it was worthwhile for you. I got a decent audience here, so I'm just gonna say one more thing, okay? Did anybody read the weekly email that I sent out? I don't know about that. I think you guys should read it again. Okay, we'll end with that. I don't think you read it all the way through, Michael.
I did not.
Yeah, I know. Okay, you're not the only one. It's okay. All right, go read the email, Donna. I know you're probably reading it right now. All right, you guys have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.